Next, we have the presentation from Dr. Praveen Kumar Khosla, Executive Director, CDAC, to speak on the theme How to Mitigate Fraud in a Digital World. Dr. Praveen K. Khosla had taken over the command of Center for Development of Advanced Computing, Mohali, India, as its Executive Director. Dr. Khosla's experience and credentials have held high utility in this organization. Here, he heads multiple teams working in areas of cybersecurity, healthcare technologies, e-governance, artificial intelligence, supercomputing, AR/VR, and agri-electronics.
Let me introduce about Dr. Praveen Khosla. Dr. Praveen Kumar Khosla has took over the command of Center for Development of Advanced Computing, CDAC, Mohali, India, as its Executive Director. Dr. Khosla's experience and credentials have held high utility in this organization. Here he heads multiple teams working in areas of cybersecurity, healthcare technologies, e-governance, artificial intelligence, supercomputing, AR/VR, and agri-electronics. While working in DRDO, he started his work in the domain of cybersecurity in 2008. He scaled into newer heights after joining CDAC. Here, he is leading teams working on national level and organizational level projects on cyber threat detection and automation of risk management projects. He is spearheading the cybersecurity initiatives of all CDEC centers as Chief Information Security Officer, CISO. His contribution in the field of science and technology has been acknowledged widely and has received Digital India Award in 2020 in the category of Innovation in Pandemic from the Honorable President of India. Let's welcome Dr. Khosla.
At the outset, let me congratulate the organizers of the 6th edition of War India's Cyber Security Summit, CDS 2022. And I must thank Dr. Deepak Sahu for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts on this topic. And I welcome all delegates who have also chosen to participate in this so important topic, which is so contemporary for India. Friends, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to loss of lives as well as loss of livelihoods. We are facing third wave in India of the pandemic. We are also experiencing cyber pandemic. In cyber pandemic, there's no second or third wave. There will be challenge of eternal waves. But at the same time, achieving the cyber superiority is not a utopian goal. Here in India, we have many challenges. Presently, the responsibilities of cybersecurity fall in the domain of many ministries. There is Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Electronics and IT, Ministry of Defense, and many other organizations within them, many verticals going on. And Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has a vision of making India the global hub of cybersecurity products and services. And he has also announced that there will be a unified cyber security task force by March 2022. And that the PDP bill will also become a reality soon, the Personal Data Protection Bill. We need to brace up to combat the challenge. The cybersecurity technologies need to be put in place so that the Personal Data Protection Bill becomes an act and also is implemented in letter and spirit. Friends, as the human race has progressed, so has the risk. Risks and the mitigation technologies have changed. There was a time in the olden days when a fort was built to protect themselves, and then came the trench was built around it, which was filled with the water, and then crocodiles were put into it. Or the China built the Great Wall of China, which is reported to have protected them for nearly 2000 years. And now they claim to have built some great firewall of China. So that's what is happening around us. And meanwhile, if I talk about the data protection, India has already taken some leads in the personal data protection. The growth of the digital economy has expanded the use of data as a critical means of communication between the persons. The right to privacy is a fundamental right, and it is necessary to protect personal data as an essential facet of information privacy. It is necessary to create a collective culture that fosters a free and fair digital economy. respecting the informal privacy of individuals and ensuring empowerment, progress, and innovation through digital governance and inclusion. Personal Data Protection Bill of India aims to provide for protection of the privacy of the individuals relating to their personal data, specify the flow and usage of personal data, create a relationship of trust between persons and entities processing the personal data, protect the rights of the individuals whose personal data are processed, to create a framework for organizational and technical measures in processing the data, laying down norms for social media intermediary, cross-border transfer, accountability of the entities processing the personal data, remedies for unauthorized and harmful processing, and to establish a data protection authority. Now, friends, if you look at the sensitive personal data, I would say it means that the personal data, which may be related to the financial data of the individual, the health data, the official identifier, the sex life, the sexual orientation, the biometric data, the genetic data, the transgender status, intersex status, caste or tribe, religious or political beliefs or affiliations of data principle. Any industrial organization collecting customer data will have to comply with the provisions of the PDP bill. Bill envisages a penalty of up to rupees 15 crore if the personal data in violation of provisions of the bill is carried out. And that's when it takes the shape of an act. Now, if you look at the cybersecurity umbrella, we need to look at the requirements of national cybersecurity as well as the organizational level security. And many of the things are common between the two and some are distinct, and it's like at the next focused more on the collection of the threat intelligence and the situational awareness using some honeypots, sensors scattered all over the country. And at the same time, at the organizational level, we may be more concerned about the endpoint protection, about the insider threats and so on. But to be secure in both the cases, all the dimensions of technology of the cybersecurity needs to be addressed. And some of these are the technologies, the right kind of technologies, the right kind of practices, the skills of the cybersecurity professionals, the awareness of the cybersecurity, the awareness of the masses, that in case, let's say there's a phishing mail, whatever technology you may put in, if the awareness is not there that it should not be clicked, it will get compromised. And the right policies, and of course, the people who matter most, who are involved in every aspect of it. So if I look at the technologies, the critical sectors of technology are the defense, the telecom, the financial sector, the health sector, the emergency services, and our supercritical sectors are the power, which I consider as the supercritical, are the power sector, the telecom sector, the emergency services, and all these heavily depend upon the imported systems. They heavily depend upon the information technology. If I give you an example, emergency response support system. Now here, in any emergency response support system, which is implemented in India through 112 and in US through 911, these services rely very heavily on the information technology. The system is, let's say, victim calls up the emergency number, a call taker takes the call, the location of the victim is displayed there, whole lot of information which is already available of the victim is displayed there, and then they have a conversation with the victim and they find out what is the challenge the victim is facing, what distress they are experiencing, and then they select from the given options that where is the what is the category of the crime or what is the category of the distress, and accordingly they also fix up the precise location of the victim based on the GPS or the LBS location services available, and then this information of the victim is passed on to a dispatch officer who gets to know the location of the victim and also the nearest emergency response vehicle. Now they prepare a case, forward it to the emergency response vehicle across state. The person may be anywhere in the state, and the vehicle is scrambled towards the victim and it is guided through a shortest path. And this is all technology backed. And once they are traveling towards the victim. They also are listening to the call or the conversation that has taken place between the victim and the call taker. And they can even talk to them. They also get the on their mobile display terminal, whole lot of information there. Now, let us say the internet connectivity itself gets compromised. The whole operation fails because the dispatch officer is not able to prepare the case and forward it to the emergency response vehicle. The emergency response vehicle doesn't get to know the information or the location of the victim, and plethora of other challenges which crop up just because the internet is denied. So the dependence on the availability of the internet is so heavy in that case that these services can be compromised, and we need to look at in cybersecurity, how do we circumvent that? Then other technological challenge is if we have to safeguard our space, we need to know what space is that. We need to enumerate the entire public facing own cyberspace, and which is also the attack surface for the adversary. And at the same time, if we want a cyber superiority, in that case, the adversary's infra is also to be mapped, like what is their public facing cyberspace. And then we need to build the threat intelligence. We need to have the situational awareness. The deployment of honeypots in thousands of numbers have to be there across all critical infrastructure sector as well as rest of the sectors, so as to know from a central control that what's happening where. And to add to this, if I go to the organizational level, you would like to know a mid-sized organization also, it's very difficult to know about their own IT assets. That means there should be agentless automatic discovery of the assets, that a SOC man who's not a researcher should be able to execute a software and find out what are the IT assets in his network and what is he going to protect and how he's going to mitigate the risk of those assets. Other technological items like next generation firewall, or now the Great Firewall of China is also being talked about. We do need such systems in place. We may not have a policy of sniffing every packet which comes into the country, but in case of war, we may have to do that as well. The technologies need to be in place. We shouldn't be digging a well when the drought sets in. On similar lines, our reliance on the operating systems which are imported is very heavy. And such systems can be easily compromised by the adversaries. It is imperative to have our own operating system instead of trying to locate a backdoor to the imported OS. You know that in case of China, all a lot of social media apps are also denied. It's not that the Chinese did not want their citizens to know what's happening in the West, or what kind of freedom they have, or what freedom of speech or freedom of free flow of information. Not that. They are educated. They know all those things. So it was the national security at the back of their mind that yes, they are denying. They have their own operating system. They have their own social media apps. They have their own search engines and so on. Whereas we are relying very heavily on the imported stuff. We need to have our own, and our own organizations, our own defense establishments need to give a chance to the indigenous technologies. And I feel as the companies become aware of the need of data protection, their leaders are likely to increase the adoption of encryption, like the adoption of digital technologies and increase the onset of COVID. Same way, I'm expecting that the adoption of encryption will also increase as the personal data protection attains the due importance. And it will definitely find the way into the basic cybersecurity architecture in 2022. This will also provide protection of data becoming public in case of a ransomware. This will have a ripple effect, and we can expect newer and updated applications providing data encryption solutions to be launched for business in the coming year. Ransomware is a menace. Our country has also faced good number of them. If you look at the statistics, they are frightening, and they are successful as well. They are able to extort the money, and then they, emboldened by those successes, repeat the attacks. The follow-up attacks are also there, and we need to develop those technologies. It's quite possible that in short while it is done, but yes, when the encryption is going on, when the exfiltration is going on, we need to have ways to detect if the ransomware is going on, and it is quite possible. Many measures have been found. For example, the if you look at the entropy of the traffic data, if it's a random data, entropy is random, but if it is a encryption data, then it is constant. That's one measure. Another measure which I think of is the disk movement. There is a distinct signature. If the encryption is going on, the disk movement would reveal many things. We can put some agents in the crucial places that if the agent is getting encrypted unintentionally also, we catch hold of, okay, the encryption is on, whether it is a desirable or undesirable. So ransomware, a lot of research needs to be done, that we develop technologies which catch hold of the very moment ransomware goes on. Otherwise, it's menacing for the industry. And on similar lines, some advanced next generation firewalls, the security information event management system, which will, because the data is enormous, we just can't process them manually. We need to automate most of the things based on machine learning models, and security incident event management system has to gain the logs from all over the places, generate alerts. And again, we need a system like security orchestration and automation and response system, because the SOAR would at least reduce the number of false alerts. The manual SOC man, security operations expert will not be able to handle so many alerts which are getting generated. So those technologies need to be developed by the technology houses like ours. That's what we do. Next is the policies. The right kind of policies ought to be in place, and they are specific to the country. Like China has got very stringent policies that the outsiders' involvement is the least. But at the same time, we also need to have something like, let's say at least the companies with 1,000 crore and above turnover need to have a CISO, well-qualified CISO in place, the Chief Information Security Officer, who has to protect their own assets. They are required to adopt the risk mitigation techniques, and which are dovetailed into their business plans and implement policies as per the international practices. For example, they need to adopt the ISO 27001 in their organizations, and this will help stir the demand for skilled security professionals, the security products and the services. We may not like to sniff every packet, but we should have the capability to do it in case of war or in case the situation arises. The most important part I would like to highlight is the people. A new dimension of cybersecurity has got added, which has profound impact on the attack pattern. The defenders are people, the offenders are people, the man in the middle is a hacker trying to exploit the victim, who is also a person. So if you look at the dominant attack vector in the recent past, is one is the USB device, the other is the compromised trusted partner or a vendor, the phishing mails, the Trojans, which are malicious softwares, the water holes when you are observed visiting certain sites, and there are oversights in patching. All of these these dominant attack vectors are all people-centric. If the people are aware, many of these can be avoided to a good extent. Similarly, the operators in the SCADA systems, they are the people. And what has been happening in the recent past, if you look at the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack, you all know how the Colonial Pipeline on the east coast of US was compromised, and the prices of fuel started going up, the prices of stocks started going up, and it is reported that a country like US had to pay the ransom of $4.2 million, which some claim was reversed also through the Bitcoins, but we don't have any authentic information as to what had happened. On similar lines, a large-scale power outage in Mumbai in October 2020, which had brought the local trains network to a standstill, and as reported, was a handiwork of a cyber attack. The CAN has even reported that there was a blackout, the trains were stopped, and the mechanism in both the cases appears to be, as reported by the media, is that the front panels are manipulated to generate alarms which are actually false. But the rule book for the operator says that in case that alarm goes off, he has to shut down the system. And that's what had happened in both the cases. There was no automatic shutdown. It had to be manually done. But then it's the psychology of the person which has been manipulated. What is he going to do on what trigger was exploited? So that people element needs to be understood and addressed accordingly. So it's something beyond even the cybersecurity domain. But again, when we are solving a problem, we have to go to all domains, whether it is psychology or electronics or computer science or IT, all those need to be addressed. Some of the challenges which I foresee is to address the cybercrime and cybersecurity formats of 2022. The chief information officers and the chief information security officers would need to face up to the challenges and ensure the cybersecurity systems carry out early detection and preemptively address attacks before they become a major incident. And all these technologies ought to be in place to make it happen. We need to strengthen their hands and ensure the configuration of the endpoint management to enable the InfoSec teams to protect organizational data from being accessed from anywhere and everywhere need to be in place. And to wrap it up, I would say whether defenders stay ahead of the curve or offenders, that shall determine the cyber resilience. The malware detection techniques need to switch from the signature-based detection techniques to the AI-powered behavior-based detection techniques. The offenders are also adopting newer technologies such as ML, poisoning of instructions to gain insight into our systems. And lastly, the defense forces also have to give a chance to the indigenous technologies so as to move at a faster pace. With this, I end my talk. Thank you very much. Once again, thanks for joining and happy learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khosla, for addressing the session.
Thank you, Dr. Khosla, for sharing the best practices needed to follow to secure everything in the digital world to safeguard against the growing cybercrime. At the dawn of the global pandemic, organizations have faced the grueling task of ensuring business continuity while simultaneously transitioning to a hybrid or fully remote work environment at a moment's notice. 2 years later, the work landscape has largely adopted remote access technologies and cloud-based software to allow employees to work from virtually anywhere and access company data at any time on any device. But how has this impacted the security posture of businesses globally? This remains a big question mark.